Are you thinking about hiring an ADHD coach for your student, either your high school student or your college student, to help them through college? Wait, stop right here. Watch this video before you decide to invest money in a coach or a service that might not actually be worth it. Today, I'm going to tell you 3 reasons not to hire an ADHD coach. And if you hang around all the way till the end, I will tell you why to hire an ADHD coach. My name's Amy. I'm a behavior analyst, a mom of 3. I've launched 3 kids to college in the last 5 years, and I am obsessed with using behavioral science to help make life easier for ADHD students, especially in college. This is a new YouTube channel, and we're here from Next Step Navigators. We do college ADHD coaching, and I want to share all the things that I've learned about ADHD and the college experience with you here on this channel. We'll also talk about living as an adult with ADHD, because the likelihood is if you have a college student with ADHD, either you or your spouse is probably also ADHD or neurodivergent. We're all friends here. We're just here to talk about it, to talk about tips, strategies, tools, hacks, and all of the things about living life with ADHD. So today, let's talk about 3 reasons why you should not hire an ADHD coach to work with your college student. Reason number 1, I'm guessing if you're here, you've bought planners, you've read the books, you've thought about coaching, you've maybe gotten your student counseling, they've probably seen a psychologist or a psychiatrist and perhaps tried a medicine regimen. Maybe they're on a medicine regimen that you thought worked really well for them. But if you're here, I'm guessing that you've at some point thought about, is an ADHD coach worth it? And is it something that I should consider for my student? And I'm going to start by telling you the 3 reasons why you should not hire an ADHD coach. The problem is that there's a lot of reasons that will keep an ADHD coach from actually being effective. That's a big deal, right? Because if you're going to invest the time and money in something, you want there to be the biggest chance of it being successful for your student and for your family. There is nothing worse as a parent than investing more financial resources in something that you will see no effects out of or that isn't likely to work for your student. So let's talk about the 3 warning flags or red flags of why you should definitely not invest in an ADHD coach. Reason number 1, if you or your student is thinking of ADHD coaching as that quick fix, that one thing that's going to fix everything, that one thing that's going to be the huge solution, when you're in a state of frustration, struggle, and you think that there's just this one choice of hiring an ADHD coach is likely to change everything, and that it's going to be a quick fix. Coaching is a lot of things, but a quick fix it is not. So if you are in it just for a quick fix, do not waste your money on an ADHD coach. And if somebody tells you that it will be, if there is a coach that tells you that it will be a huge game changer and tells you all of these benefits, but doesn't mention what the student will have to invest, effort, mental energy, engagement, and finances, run away from that coach, because they're lying to you. Because the biggest predictor of success in a coaching process depends on both the student and the coach. No matter how good a coach is, if the student's not willing to engage, it's not likely to be successful. It's not going to be a successful process. And there's many more variables that actually go into whether or not that process and that relationship is going to be successful. But the one thing that it is not, the one thing that coaching is not, is a quick fix. So don't invest in coaching if that's what you're looking for. Without a coach that is available enough to talk to and coach the student, and then also check in with them throughout the rest of the time period before the next coaching appointment, it's very unlikely that your student will have enough exposure, enough encouragement, and enough accountability to actually make those behavioral changes on their own. Because let's be real, your ADHD college student probably didn't get this far without ever hearing another tip, trick, or strategy on how to work with their ADHD brain. By now, they've probably heard it all, right? And the truth of the matter is if they could implement all of those things on their own, we probably wouldn't be in this scenario. And so the thought process that any workbook, any app, any calendar, anything like that, even any coach that only talks to you once every 1 or 2 weeks without anything in between is likely to actually create behavior change is really just like hoping on a prayer. It's like making a wish on a dandelion. That's just not how behavioral science works. What we need is that continual accountability. We need that coach to be continually checking in because we need the student to be continually trying to implement those tips and strategies. And if it's not working, to be asking, well, what else should I try? Or how else can you hold me accountable? Or maybe I need to find a new reward for myself to get this done. Otherwise, it's just kind of rinse and repeat of the same things that they've already heard, which not only is unsuccessful, but it's incredibly frustrating for the student, which it's just not helpful. Reason number 2 why you should not hire an ADHD coach to work with your college student is if your college student is not willing, or you are not willing, to be open to trial and error and some experimentation. Here's the thought process behind this. Not everybody has the same reasons for the deficits or the struggles that they have. For instance, I work with a lot of students that miss deadlines for assignments, but there's no less than 10 reasons that I can think of off the top of my head on why students struggle with missing assignments. And no 2 students are exactly the same. And so one strategy or one process doesn't fix every student's issue with missing assignments. So you have to have an engaged coach with the experience and the expertise to actually be able to assess your student on multiple levels of the behaviors, right? To be able to make suggestions for what would work. And if something doesn't work, to be able to pivot, course correct, and coach. That's the whole thing about a coach, right? So if you think about it like when you're coaching somebody how to hit a home run, how many different things do coaches change? They change their stance. They might change where their elbow is. They change their step. They change the way that they hold the bat. It's the same thing with ADHD coaching. We have to figure out why the struggle or the deficit is present and how we can use the student's strengths to overcome that and how we can make it work for them so that in the environment that they're in, they can have success at whatever task they're trying to complete. So sometimes it takes multiple trials, multiple errors, multiple iterations of it. And if your student or you are not ready to endure that process to figure those things out, then ADHD coaching isn't for you. It's going to be incredibly frustrating and it's not worth your time or money. Reason number 3 not to invest in a college ADHD coach is if you or your student isn't ready to invest in themselves. And when I talk about invest in themselves, I'm not just talking about finances. I'm talking about the energy, the emotional investment, and the financial investment. ADHD coaching isn't free, and to find someone who is actually qualified to assess your student on multiple levels and then be available enough to engage with them multiple times during the week like they need to. Like maybe you have one coaching session during the week or every other week, but then you have multiple communication points, whether it be through text message, email, phone call, pre-set up timers. There's multiple ways that we can have contact with each other between coaching sessions, but that kind of thing is necessary because otherwise we don't actually change the behaviors. Well, for a student to be engaged in that process, they have to be willing to receive those things. They have to actually respond to them. And they have to be real and honest with whether or not they're actually implementing the tips, the strategies, and the tools. And if they're not implementing them, they also have to be honest enough to admit that and to tell us why. Because I don't believe students want to struggle. So if they're not implementing something, there's a behavioral reason why. It's too hard. It's not something that they can really do. There's some sort of a barrier. There's some reason why they're not willing to implement that. And so when we figure out that reason, then we can make suggestions that might work with the student better. But we have to have that information, that contact, and that engagement in order to reach success. So if they're not willing to invest in the process, in effort level, in vulnerability, in emotional energy, in engagement, then no financial investment by the parent is going to pay off. So that's really important. I also think it's really wise for parents to discern whether or not the financial investment is worth it to them. Every family has different values, different resources available to them. And honestly, an additional investment in this type of service might just be too much for some families. Now, I would argue that if somebody's truly utilizing the service, then there's going to be an ROI on it because the cost of college tuition is so sky high that any avoidance of wasting tuition dollars by not gaining credits or being in college longer will definitely be realized by an effective coaching practice. But every family has to really adequately look at and discern their financial resources and what the best way is to use those. And that's up to each and every family. So it's definitely a consideration to think about. And reason number 3 for not hiring an ADHD. Okay, so I've told you 3 reasons why not to hire an ADHD coach. Number 1, you're looking for a quick fix. Willing to troubleshoot, experiment, and adjust the course. And number 3, you're not ready to invest in it. But there's one overarching reason that makes all of these 3 things just minor points. And the biggest reason is if your student doesn't want to be coached, isn't willing to be coached, or is resistant to the entire idea, don't hire an ADHD coach. You might be screaming at me, right? You might be yelling at the screen that your student doesn't know what's good for them, or your student doesn't understand how badly they need this help. And I understand. I'm a parent. I get it. I totally get it. But the truth of the matter is that now that our children are adults, the consent process is incredibly important on multiple levels. It's important on the level of they have to engage in the process in order for it to be successful. But also, now that they're an adult, we want them to truly understand what informed consent is and understand that they have the right and the agency over their own life to either consent or not consent to a variety of things. Any kind of a healthcare treatment, any kind of a coaching agreement, any kind of like mental health treatment, all of these things. They truly need to understand what informed consent is, and that if they are going to consent to something, then they should be an active part of the process in order to help themselves and to improve their lives. The other really want to be coached, then they're not going to put in the energy, the engagement, and all of those things into the process that is required to make it successful. I already covered that with the other 3 points. So I can't talk for other coaching services. For us, fully enroll your child and take full payment until we speak to them. So you can call us and you can tell us all about the scenario and what's going on with your kid, and we love to hear about it. But our first step is we're going to set up an interview with your student to see if coaching is the right fit for them. And we ask when we do that interview for it just to be the student. So we prefer that the parent not be on the phone call, not be on the video call, not even be in the same room. Because the truth of the matter is that what we've found is sometimes students in front of their parents will say, yes, I'm willing to be coached. I want to be coached. I want to improve and things like that. And then that very same student, when they get on campus, won't even return our phone call. And the problem with that is that's just a huge waste of time and resources for the parent and for the coaching practice. Because when we sign up a kid for coaching, we reserve their spot for the entire semester. And so if they just don't engage, then they've just wasted those coaching funds, and they've also wasted a spot that could have gone to another student who really did want to be coached. So that's how we work, is that we really, 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 really require the student fully have informed consent and also understand what that coaching process is actually going to look like. The other thing about it is our coaching service is completely individualized, and so we really like to feel out the student to see what they would be comfortable with. Some of our students want to meet every single week, and we plan out their weeks. Others want us to check in on them every other week, and we text message them and email them at multiple points during those 2 weeks because we've planned those 2 weeks out. Others want help with assignments and breaking tasks down. Others need help with setting up bedtime routines and setting up grocery lists and things like that. It really varies what we can do as an ADHD coach, but it takes us knowing what that student needs, wants, and wants to set goals for themselves. Because to be honest, like, I could tell a student that I think they need to improve their diet, they need to improve their bedtime routine, they need to get more sleep, they need to lay off drinking as much. But if it's not important to that student, then they're not going to make progress on those, and it's kind of a waste of time and resources. So we really want to work and talk to those students individually. So the biggest overarching thing is, if your student doesn't want to be coached or has no interest in the coaching process, don't pay for a coach for them, whether it's us or somebody else. A parent of one of our students who we had been working through a lot of crisis during the previous semester. And although we don't talk to parents every week, a lot of times we will touch base with them, especially if our students are in crisis. And after the scenario had kind of like rectified itself, I was talking to them, and the parent was so frustrated because we've almost had to force them to accept our help. Even though we were willing, even though it was fine, we had to force them to be willing to accept our help just to get them through this semester. And I tried to remind the parent that it's not necessarily any reflection on the relationship that they have with their child, but it's literally developmental psychology. Just like we call the terrible twos or the terrible threes because of those developmental stages that kids go through at that age, this young adult period also is subject to developmental psychology. What do we know about this period between 18 and 22? We know that they're very egocentric, that they're trying to figure out their independence, that they're trying to assert themselves as adults, and that they're trying to gain agency over their own lives. So all of those things, part of that developmental psychology process is that they're resistant, that they are resistant to taking input from their parents, that they are resistant to asking for help. So it's not necessarily a reflection of your parent-child relationship, but rather just where they are in their developmental process. So with that being said, I know it seems like a little bit of a contrary thing, right? So I said, well, if they don't want to be coached, then don't get them a coach. But then I also said that they're very resistant to help because that's developmental psychology. What we have found is that there are kids that are willing to engage in the coaching process. And to be honest, sometimes they prefer coaches over parents. As a parent, you may not be able to, like, you could literally say the same very thing to your child that I will say to your child, and it will be received differently because it's coming from me versus you. That's just how it works sometimes. And it's a really hard thing to get used to, and it's ever so frustrating, but it's just how it is. It's just real life. And if you think back on it, I can imagine that you could probably remember a time in your life when somebody else told you something that your parents definitely had told you before, and you accepted it a little bit easier from them than you did from your parents. So it's just how we all are. It's human nature. Behavioral psychology, behavioral science, science for the win. So I've told you the 3 reasons why you definitely should not hire an ADHD coach, with one overarching reason, right? They don't want to be coached, don't hire a coach. But let's talk about when they are open to the idea of a coach, then a coach is definitely worth their weight in gold. And the reason why is because they can work with each student to develop their individual goals and to help them navigate this huge life transition at a time when it's more expensive than it ever has been before, and maybe avoid some of the hassles and failures and speed bumps that have been kind of like normalized in our college ADHD students' lives. The statistics for college completion are terrible. Only about 40% of students with ADHD will graduate within 6 years. Within 6 years. Like, that is bananas when you start running the cost of tuition, the cost of fees, the cost of living expenses, and all of those things. So for that reason, a college ADHD coach could literally save you thousands, if not tens of thousands of dollars if your student engages in the process. So that's one reason. Another reason is that if a student is receptive to coaching, it can also help mitigate other problems. It can help them avoid mental health crises. It can help them reduce their anxiety and stress. It can help them work towards building relationships with their college community. It can help them work towards figuring out what they want to do as a career. It has multiple benefits depending on how your college student utilizes the service. So those are all really positives that can come out of college ADHD coaching. As a follow-up at the end of the semester, about a couple of weeks ago, and one thing that she had said to me is that, she wasn't just excited about the fact that we had rescued her son's semester. He came to us in the middle of the semester and it wasn't going well. And we were able to get him, he was able to get off of academic probation. He was actually going to still graduate within a year and all of these things. So we had kind of like averted the huge crisis. But she said the biggest thing that she was excited about was that he had actively accepted help and now knew how to ask for help on his own terms. And so for her, what she was saying to me is, I could never get my husband to go to a therapist when he's struggling with depression or anxiety or stress. But now that I know my son has had this experience, when he is older, he will be more likely to ask for help when he needs help with anxiety, with stress, with depression, which should just make the quality of his life better. And I had never really considered it that way, but she's right. When we have positive experiences and we know that the results have actually helped us, then human behavior is when things work for us, we do them again. And so when we engage in a coaching process and we realize that it can be successful, then we're much more likely to seek help from other professionals when we know that we need their help. As we go on further in our life. And that's just a great, what a great accomplishment, what a great quality and lesson for our students to learn very early in their adult lives. So there are multiple reasons to hire an ADHD coach. And if you're interested to find out more, you can always reach us at our email, which I'll put in the description. And I'm also going to link a description for our free ebook that talks all about executive functioning skills in college and some of just the basic tips and tricks and strategies that can be done without individual coaching. Have a good day, and thank you for joining us.